Emotions are essential to the human experience. But when emotions become too intense, we can lose control over our feelings and actions. Rage, panic, overwhelming grief. These states can lead us to make poor choices that carry profound consequences. The amygdala hijack. At the heart of emotional hijacking is the amygdala, an almond-shaped set of neurons deep in the brain. The amygdala acts as a storehouse for emotional memories and as the brain's hazard detection system. When it senses a potential threat, the amygdala triggers the fight-or-flight response before you have time to consciously think. This reaction is incredibly useful in truly dangerous situations where we need to act fast. But it can cause problems when the amygdala overreacts to non-life-threatening events, like an argument with your spouse or getting cut off in traffic. Brain imaging scans show elevated amygdala activation in people prone to anger and fear. When this area becomes overheated, it essentially hijacks the thinking centers of the brain. We lose the ability to respond thoughtfully or consider long-term consequences. We're left to the mercy of primal emotions. Physiology of emotional arousal. What exactly happens in the body when amygdala hijacking occurs? First, the amygdala signals the hypothalamus to activate the sympathetic nervous system. This triggers a cascade of physiological changes. Heart rate increases to circulate blood to muscles. Breathing becomes rapid to take in more oxygen. Blood pressure rises to send blood to vital organs. Perspiration increases to cool the body. Adrenaline and cortisol flood the system. This energized state is meant to be temporary, just long enough to address an acute threat. But chronic stress keeps us locked in fight-or-flight mode for too long. The cumulative effects on the body and mind are exhaustive. They set the stage for emotional overload. Cognitive distortions, out-of-control emotions are often intensified by distorted patterns of thinking. When in distress, we're prone to unhelpful mental shortcuts like catastrophizing, imagining the worst-case scenario, black-and-white thinking, evaluating in extremes overgeneralization, broad conclusions from limited experience personalization, blaming oneself for external events. These distorted thought patterns ramp up emotional reactions. For example, viewing a minor mistake as a complete personal failure can trigger intense self-criticism. Learning to dispute irrational thoughts can prevent emotions from spiraling. Unmet core needs. Behind many emotional control issues are fundamental unmet needs. We all require essentials like loving relationships, a sense of competence, and freedom of choice. When deprived of these core needs, we enter in a state of distress and volatility. Childhood influences. The way emotions were handled in our family of origin shapes emotional control later in life. If parents punished expressions of vulnerability or anger, we likely internalize feelings are dangerous. This can cause them to leak out erratically under pressure. Growing up surrounded by hot-headed role models who shout or throw things models this lack of control for kids. They adopt similar outbursts as a learned response. However, we can overcome problematic programming by learning emotion regulation skills. Self-judgment. Ironic as it sounds, judging our own emotions often makes them more intense. When we reject feelings as irrational or ridiculous, this invalidating self-talk exacerbates emotional distress. It traps us in a cycle of escalation. Strategies to regain emotional control. Now let's explore constructive strategies to avoid losing control of emotions. Recognize triggers. Learn your personal red flags that reliably trigger emotional hijacking. Awareness of hot buttons is power. Press pause. When heated, take time to calm down before reacting. Breathe, go for a walk, meditate. Anything to hit reset. Talk to your amygdala. Tell yourself you're not in mortal danger, even if you feel you are. This tames the fear response. Validate feelings. Don't argue with emotions or they'll gain strength. Acknowledge them, then redirect to wise action. Access thinking brain. Engage prefrontal cortex by asking what advice you'd give a friend or what you'd do in 5 years. Challenge distorted thoughts. Examine pessimistic thought patterns. What evidence supports/disputes them? Consider alternate views. Meet unmet needs. Make a plan to fulfill core requirements like connection and autonomy so you're less reactive. Practice self-compassion. Treat yourself as you would a loved one, with gentleness, not judgment. This calms emotions, set boundaries, decide what treatment you will and won't accept from others. Maintain personal rights and limits. Model mastery. Be mindful of how you handle emotions around kids and others. They learn techniques from your example.